when this resurgence of interest in Baba Dick happened, how did the family deal with it? Or how did it affect? What was your perception of all this?
Great question. And as my dad got back into comedy, just to quickly tell him, so comedy originally, civil rights, human rights, anti-war campaign, transitioned into health, nutrition space. And that's when he became a businessman. And there's a lot about that is worthy of lengthier conversations. I mean, Dick Gregory's goal was to make as many black millionaires as humanly possible. Armstrong, Williams, many of them today got their wealth through Dick Gregory, through selling his Caribbean diet, his Bahamian diet then. Then after he lost the company from financial challenges, mismanagement, some infighting, things that happen when you grow too fast. You grow too fast. I may be able to manage $1 million company. I might not be able to manage $1 billion company of everyone not knowing their roles and lanes. So lost everything to most people, but they weren't things that meant anything to him. Like, in no way did it impact him in a way that it would impact most people or how they would think. Came to Washington, D.C., which was always kind of home away from home for us Gregorys anyway, especially my dad. Connected with Kathy Hughes over at Radio 1. They started doing a show together. So that, similar to what Hugh Hefner did in the 60s of giving him a platform, Kathy Hughes did the same thing. She gave my dad a platform where every day he was talking and being able to do the same thing he did as a comedian, look at the paper, explain to the people what's going on in the world. So this was kind of, again, his metamorphosis. And so in DC, and I said this before in the day, you'd walk down the street, people would toot the horn, Brother Dick. He was everywhere. I mean, so he was back in, he had his stride, ultimately his glide back. And so although folks in the precursor to the metaverse, social media and on the web and YouTube may have just been discovering him, in his world, everywhere he walked, photos were taken, autographs were given. So we never, and since most of us Gregorys are older, we weren't necessarily deep in social media then anyway. So we weren't aware of that resurgence. And since none of us were digital, he would go on the Breakfast Club. None of us even knew what that was. And so it didn't impact us at all. And it was always, Pop was always just Pop. He was always working, he was, so Dick Gregory is a grandfather. I have a vivid memory of this, of him holding my little niece and his granddaughter. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, and talking to her in a very grandpa appropriate tone, and tickling her little chin and talking to her, and was like, hey, hey baby girl, that the Vatican owns your birth certificate. And I started dying, because he wasn't doing it. He was doing it for her. He was, because he had that much respect for indigo children. Hey, you put it in there. You don't know when it's going to come back out. Right. You are never too young for me to start planting seeds. And she kind of looked up what's the Vatican and what's a birth certificate? And so he was always on stage, man. So there was through the family's eyes, the lens of the folks who loved him, we never saw that, that wane and then that wax again. It was just always now. As I became more digital and we're like, oh, okay, well, hey, it was Christmas 2014 or so. And Dick Gregory loved holidays. A lot of people say, we celebrated Christmas. And a lot of people take theirs and want to put it on this is what the Gregorys do, because this is what I would think Dick Gregory would do. But when it was Christmas, we were sitting around. A lot of times he and I fasted for Christmas, because it wasn't just father and son. We were partners. We had relationships bigger than our genetics. And so I said, hey, Pop, we should probably set you up a social media page. And so, you're doing all these shows. We can advertise. Lord knows I have a treasure trove of photographs that I can start posting and putting up. And so we did it. Okay, it was maybe 2013, 2014. Okay. Then the Breakfast Club came along, and then that digital world.
No, we were first.
Oh yes. No,
Brother Ron was before Breakfast Club.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We gotta, it's a pecking order, and so he was warming up on y'all as he was in. But
yeah. No, it's my stage.
Absolutely.
Beyonce. I hate to interrupt you, Taylor Swift, but
look, man, I remember I got the messages. You got a little desperate for a minute, man. I got the calls. We want to break
Yeah.
some news.
Yeah.
When I remember you calling me like, oh,
More people
I
wanna
got to
see
get
these.
your dad back on the channel. Oh, my numbers on the channel after your dad
Yeah.
was on. I said, man, this dad's 80 years old. He's not worried about your numbers. So that sounds like your business problem.
Yeah.
And then I know the two of you connected. You did come down to DC.
Yeah.
It's when he had on the, he dressed
suit?
up for you, man. He put
Yeah.
on the 3-piece suit. He came with his smoothie. I see folks asking about what's in his green
what's in
smoothie.
the green smoothie,
And
yeah.
so, lots of green vegetables.
Okay, but
And
Breakfast Club, all right,
And
fast
so
forward to
then he
Breakfast
fast
Club.
forward to the Breakfast Club, and he was on the Breakfast Club and said, I'm not on any social media. And then I started taking that, this ain't Dick Gregory. I'm like, look, folks, and sometimes, it's like, hey, you're talking to the man's son. Someone just recently, there was a post, beautiful post I put up, and someone, some brother in the comments was like, yeah, you said something. I think it was on he said, you said something on Real Black
okay.
that was not accurate. And I really want to ask you about that. So I followed the brother, because I don't hide from anyone.
Right.
I didn't reach out to him to say, hey, what's your question? I'm following you now. Inbox me the pages are open to everyone.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times people get bold and then they back them. But yes, the audacity. Like, I'm not saying I know everything, but your tone, again, those are the people whose x-rays upside down and it's not theirs, and they're pointing
Right.
to their leg bone and it's their shoulder. And so these are the folks that think they know some. Stop thinking of what you know and know it. And that was Dick Gregory's thing. And so sure, as he got older, when he should have said 1 million, he may have said 1 billion. But don't
Right.
get caught up in the math. Get caught up in the lesson, the
message,
story. And
yeah.
when we get, I travel so much now. Every time I park my car, I got to take a picture of where I park, because there's just too much in here. And I'm thinking, whoa, I have nothing in my brain compared to what he has in it. And so, yes, people, as a man, black man who loves his community and loves his people across the diaspora and does a lot of work to uplift, we should do better. I say this all the time. Talk less, do more. Doesn't mean you don't have a right to talk. No, but earn it. Do the work. Do the work. This stuff is hard. It's not. And when you're just sitting there, there's real life. And when my dad had cancer, and he made a very clear decision that he, Dick Gregory, again, different operating systems, one's Windows, one's a Mac, decided he was not going to do cancer. We did a very cutting edge gene therapy, but he didn't want to do cancer. And he didn't want to do chemo or radiation. And it's one of the, I never pulled my pop's coattail on thing, but I said, hey, Pop, listen, this was me talking as a healthcare provider. I said, there are a lot of, fast food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner folks that do not have your operating system that are going to say, well, if Brother Dick's not doing chemo, throw mine away too, and they're going to die. And I was like, it's important that we calibrate this message and make sure that we make people clear, and I would have had the same message with my dad if it was during the vaccine. Like, no. Stop wanting the easy way out. Do the work. What is your, and I'm simplifying it. There's thousands of operating systems. There's not just two. I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
So you really have to, if you enjoy life and you appreciate it, there should be changes you're making long before we get to these crises. Like when folks, I got to get my leg removed. Well, you've known for 10 years that your blood sugar was off. Like at some point we have to back up and take responsibility for these things as a culture, as a community, and do better. And so the funniest thing, and I'll close on this, Dick Gregory meeting black fans compared to Dick Gregory meeting white fans. And it was a totally different reaction from him, not because of any isms, but just because of how we behave. And so white folks would come up, hey, Mr. Gregory, pleasure to meet you. I'm a huge fan. Can I get a picture, get an autograph? Done. Thank you for your service. Black folks, and listen, I'm overgeneralizing, but black folks would come up, oh my God, Dick Gregory, my man, can we take a picture, get a photograph? And as he's signed, doing everything, because he's a man of the people, Dick, what you said about 9/11 towers, I don't agree with that because, and then he'd go off. And they'd be like, oh, Dick, hey, if you meet Michael Jordan, whoever, and you say, hey, Mike, in Game 6, I don't know why you don't have the credibility, the authority, the foundational support to even come at someone like that. The
information.
or the information. You've come to them in their space while they're sitting and eating a meal, and you come up, and now you want to be able to say, yeah, I saw Dick Gregory and I really taught him something. Like, that's something that we should, as a people, we should absorb, move on, build, and stop trying to prove who's smarter, who's brighter, because it's relative. And as my dad would always say, you can take the smartest cat you know with 10 PhDs. If we're in downtown China and they bark out, clear the building in Mandarin Chinese, your smart ass is not going to know anywhere about it because you don't understand the language. Your intelligence is directly tied into your ability to communicate and understand language and imagery. We have to slow down and do better. And I'm saying that out of someone who doesn't love you to death, but someone who loves you to life. And so, always a pleasure, brother.
Appreciate it. Well, what'll be really interesting at this point is if people, because your father touched so many people in so many different ways, it'll be really interesting in the comments to see like what people's first interaction or exposure to
I love
Dick
that,
Gregory
man.
would be.
I never get tired of hearing people's Dick Gregory stories. People think, oh, I'm sure you're tired of Never. And he never got tired of hearing it because there's so much work that we're doing. I mean, really, those stories are really the wind beneath our team's wings that's doing this work. I mean, it's sustaining my mom. Oh, my mom saw Right to Offend last night, and she was just, I mean, oh, she has age-appropriate dementia that should be there for someone her age and the life that she lived. Right. Dick Gregory's wife, she was his partner too. She wasn't just, and no disrespect to stay-at-home parents, but she wasn't just a stay-at-home parent. She was out there on the front line with him. And the joy I felt as a son, man, when she called me and just went wild, man. That's the type of joy that you want to do things in life. That's the compensation. The compensation, uplifting the folks who did so much. As you know, I served in a very similar capacity with Miss Cicely Tyson, and I would just be elated to hear the stories, to prop them up, and every time they were so happy about something, Cicely was very technology, adept, and every time you could show her, I was her IT, her tech man. So I would show her things, and then she would go back to show it to Harry Belafonte. So I'm like, okay, I'm the IT man of legends. I taught Dick Gregory how to turn his iPhone on and how to say call Lil and to call my mom. So it's like, that's a big hat, man. That's a big responsibility. So, that itself deserves a pat on the back from you, my brother.
You definitely get a pat on the back from us. Thank you for spending the time hanging out, coming up to where we are to be a part of
absolutely.
The show. So, and I can't recommend this any higher. It really, when you read it, you hear
it's special.
You hear his voice. You hear his voice,
and that's just because it literally is a transcript. It's like your mom left you a voicemail, and you transcribe it and write it down. You can only read it in her voice because it is her voice. There's no, there's no creativity that went into here other than what's come from this man's beautiful mind. So this is about the best birthday gift, best 90th birthday gift for Brother Dick is to buy the book, support the books, and not for financial reasons, because we give so many of them away to schools and libraries, because you are helping the Gregory family, helping Dick Gregory to cross-pollinate and to get this message out. Stop trying to keep our icons' messages just for us. This work is needed outside of the tent. The global village needs it. Let's do our part to get it out there.
Thank you.